Good morning, Tallahassee. It's time to wake up Warchant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Now, here's your host, Aslan Hajavandi.
Good morning. It is the Thursday edition of Wake Up Warchant, and you just woke up what Corey Clark called a recruiting monster yesterday. He's joining us, as always. It's a Wake Up Warchant again. I'm Aslan Hajavani. Thanks so much for being here. This is sponsored, of course, by the good folks at For the Table. They have three great properties at the College Town area, Madison Social, Central, and Township. Go check them all out. I think Thursday is like a taco special at Township. Don't quote me, but check it out. Go ahead, Google it. I should probably quote myself on this sort of stuff because they do sponsor it. Maybe I'll know in one of the other segments. But, yeah, what a crazy time.
They're always going to have tacos, right, no matter what?
Yeah, but this is good value. We're all about value.
Oh,
Hashtag
right, sure,
value.
Sure.
Hashtag value. All right, Corey, I'm just going to go ahead and, part of me doesn't want to say this because I don't want people at home to think that I'm bending to their will because I'm getting killed on the internet about all this. Enough with the Jimbo love. This guy sucks.
Oh, are you?
He doesn't know. He doesn't understand the fan base. Like I'm running for office and I'm trying to get my constituents in line. But, dude, I'm sold now. I mean, I know he's still got to coach a game and he's got to win games.
Yep.
But,
so far, he's done well.
Which is an important part. But, man,
right.
Totally impressed by not only him and the way he carries himself, but also that staff that was at the Car Museum last night. I know you were covering the basketball game, but I mean, golly, 70 to not. I mean, from 70-something in the rankings to number 9, I think that's the last check I saw. Amazing, man.
Yeah, and we've touched on it the last couple days. We didn't know he was going to finish that strong. We knew, I think the kid from Buford, the Anthony Grant kid, was kind of maybe a surprise. It certainly was. It felt at most like 50-50. But to close that strong where you finish in the top 10, did they end up finishing ahead of Alabama?
No, let's not get carried away now, Corey.
I mean, Alabama, I saw at one point was like 12th, which is crazy. I don't know if Saban just didn't decide, maybe trying to take it easy on the rest of the country and decide not to get all the best players. But
distributing the wealth.
But not only did he bring in a class like that in 2 months, but think about the obstacles of not having your staff for half of that time, not having your full staff. I mean, you're getting kids to commit and sign who didn't know who their defensive coordinator was going to be, or their offensive coordinator, or their position coach. And then in January, and then also you missed out on a lot of kids that you probably could have gotten in the mix with if we were on the old system where there was only one signing day. Willie Taggart comes in early December. He has 2 months to make a splash with a kid and maybe convince him to come to Florida State. Well, that early signing period, I think, swallowed up 60%, 70% of the top 250 recruits. And not many were coming to Florida State. So he had to go, he didn't have a full lake to fish from. And he still ends up, that's a good analogy.
That's
right?
Awesome, man.
I just got pulled that out.
Look at this guy.
I was going to go a car route. I was going to go something in the fields. And then I pulled the lake out of my behind.
Brain, your big brain.
My big brain. Yeah. So for him to do that, man, is really remarkable to have all those obstacles with the coaching staff, not getting the not having that full lake to fish in, and still bring in a top 10 class in 2 months. With the staff that's been together for basically a month, it just portends to something really, really scary for other schools when it comes to recruiting. Because this guy, I just feel like he's going to knock it out of the park.
It's not a fluke. It's not a fluke. One of the coolest moments, and I'm sorry, I'm not quite up to speed yet, folks, technologically. To be able to play all the stuff that we heard last night and when we had the press conference earlier in the afternoon, which Corey was able to attend. He was at the basketball game. Michael Langston and I were at the Car Museum at the signing day party. You'll hear from Michael Langston in the second
It'd have been cool
segment.
if we could all have been at both.
Yeah, they limited us, though, apparently. They big leagued us. I don't want to throw people under the bus. But, I wish I could hit the button right now and play it so you could actually hear it from his voice himself. But David Kelly, who is the receivers coach, I think at one point was just going to be kind of a personnel kind of guy for Willie, but when the receiver position coaching candidates kind of dried up, he just went ahead and he's like, listen, I'm just going to go ahead and make David Kelly the wide receivers coach. He told the people in the crowd, he's like, listen, he's like, Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Dabo Swinney, he's like, I'm here to tell you, folks, this guy right here, he is the best recruiting head coach in the entire nation. He obviously qualified with, he didn't say that he was the best head coach in the entire nation, but he just said, listen, this guy, when it comes to recruiting, as a head coach, he's the best. He's the goods. And it speaks to your point, man. You mentioned it when you were talking to Gene and did your little wrap up after the press conference. That listen, like this, it's a monster, man. It really is. It's a recruiting monster. This guy.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's going to be really scary. Just to be honest with you, much like Jimbo Fisher, what he did in 2010 when he had whatever that was, a month where he was the head coach and brought in LaMarcus Joyner, Telvin Smith, Cameron Irving, all these guys that are in the NFL. He had a month that Christian Jones, Christian Green. I mean, he brought in 5-star. He brought in an incredible class, like a top 5 class, and he'd been the head coach for a month. That had to be really scary to rival fan bases. Right. And I think this is even kind of more remarkable than that.
Because Taggart was so much time to prepare the head coach and waiting.
He had been recruiting those guys for 3 years. Yeah. Taggart comes in out of the blue and puts together, literally across the country, and puts together a top 10 class, gets a kid to commit from Washington, come all the way across the country to Tallahassee, another kid that he had known that Florida State hadn't even offered, the Woodbay kid, the safety.
Would-be. I heard Jeff say on the show yesterday, would-be.
Would-be.
Yeah.
Would-be or not would-be?
Tis the question.
That's
tis the prospect.
That's good stuff. But to get those kids, I think they got a tight end too from California.
Yeah, Long Beach.
He convinced 3 kids to come all the way across the country. That's not easy to do, man. And especially, I don't think Florida State's had a kid from Washington in 20 years. Again, I just think you've got a guy that players they relate to, they feel comfortable with. I think they feel comfortable with his staff. Now, look, the whole caveat is you can be a great recruiter. If you don't win games, kids are going to be like, all right, man, I really love talking to him. He's an awesome guy. The coaching staff really seems to like each other. They're fun on Twitter, but they just went 6-6. I want to go to Alabama. Or I want to go to Georgia. They win games there. So the most important thing is winning games. That's the best recruiting tool. The second best recruiting tool is, tradition, history, and now Willie Taggart. I just think he's going to knock it out of the park and get a lot of guys in here. Now, the question you wonder, and I don't think he's going to be this, is he Florida State's Ron Zook?
Butch Jones is a name that was.
Well, but I was going to say Ron Zook because he puts together. Ron Zook put some great players on the field. Then Urban Meyer came in and won championships with him. I think Willie Taggart's obviously a much more proven head coach than Ron Zook was when he took the Florida job. So is he going to be the Ron Zook or is he going to be the Urban Meyer, the guy that can recruit and coach, or the guy that can just recruit? I think he's both, and I think he's proven he can do both. Right. But we have, you got to see it at Florida State.
Yeah, we talked about the other guy and whether he's closer to Nick Saban or if he's closer to Gene Chizik in terms of the polar opposites and where he fits on that sort of spectrum. I think that's sort of the thing with Willie Taggart is he going to be a Butch Jones kind of a guy where he's going to recruit really well and then but the thing, I don't see him melting down the way that Butch Jones would in terms of game planning situations, game management, just because his demeanor is too calm. He's too relaxed. I know on a Saturday or Labor Day with Virginia Tech breathing down your throat in one possession game in the fourth quarter, things are going to get a little hairy. But I was able to just, little things, and this sounds so pathetic in a way, and I'm sorry, but before he actually started talking, he was looking around. He was scanning the room in the Champions Club before he started talking, making his opening statement to make sure that everybody was kind of ready. He's like, are y'all ready? Ready? Right. And I goofed up and messed something up on the tripod. Hopefully Boss Man's not listening to this, but I was kind of struggling. So if you were looking at me, you could see that I was some dude struggling. He pointed at me, which is the actual image that's on warchant.com right now from that story.
Oh, is he pointing at you?
He pointed at me. He's like, are you okay? He's like, you ready to go?
Right. I didn't realize that was you that he was talking to.
I was struggling and fumbling around. I'm like, it's a little thing.
Man, Jimbo would do that stuff all the time.
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
Liar.
Of course not.
It's like showing humanity. I mean, that, and then again, I wish I could press the button and play it for you right now, folks, but I can't. But if you go on the Warchant Twitter page, you'll see it. But the answer that he gave to that guy that you talked about bringing guys in from Seattle, and they're like, what do you tell these kids to bring them all the way over here? And he's like, Florida State, man.
Yeah, it's Florida State. It's Florida State.
What are you talking about, man?
Yeah.
And it just that's what I tell them. I mean, those 2 moments, I'm like, all right, man, I'm a believer. I believe this guy is not only has the recruiting chops, but I just feel like he has the demeanor to be a good game day kind of guy. I mean, I don't know if he's going to make the best play calls all the time, but just you fear just some sort of, crazy lunatic guy, not him. He hasn't shown us any sort of, reason to believe that he'd be that way. But, Butch Jones is the kind of guy I keep gravitating towards. A guy who had a good record at a group of 5 program, but then got the keys to a big-time program and drove into a ditch. I don't feel that way, man. I'd feel really optimistic about this guy because no matter how his game planning is going, if he's going to recruit like this, man, it's going to make him look good. Yeah,
and again, I think you're on, I know Georgia had the number 1 class in the country. Go Dogs.
Alabama's number 7, by the way, on Rivals. So Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Southern Cal 3, Texas 4, Penn State 5, the U 6.
Where's Florida State? Where did they finish?
9.
So they did finish 9.
Yes.
I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy.
The Gators 17th.
I think it was 7. I think they were 70th or 71st when he took over. They might have been not applicable. It might have just been an NA because they didn't have any commits because they all left, which they should. You don't commit to a school without knowing who the head coach was. But for him to bring in 21 kids in 2 months, 14 of them 4-stars, one of them a 5-star from across the country. The number 2 player in Washington. And that kid can fly, by the way. Oh, boy. I don't know what kind of college football player he's going to be, but, man, he can run. Again, it all comes down to winning games. I think at Florida State, a guy like him at Florida State is going to produce recruiting classes much like Jimbo did in 2010, 2011, and 2012. I don't really know what happened in 14, 15, and 16. Obviously, those classes weren't as good, even though they were still ranked really high. Right. They weren't quite as good as the 11 class is one of the best classes ever. I mean, it was just nuts, all the people that were in that class. And then 13, you had Jalen Ramsey. 12, you had Mario Edwards and Jameis Winston. I mean, there was a crazy run there where he had some unbelievable classes. I think that's going to be the norm here. I just think this guy is going to load the roster with so many 4- and 5-star kids that it'll be almost impossible to not win 9 or 10 games. You would stumble into 9 or 10 wins because you're going to be that good across the board. I could be 100% wrong. I just think, because you said, there's the little things that you pick up, not just the recruiting, the way he interacts, the confidence. There's a confidence about him, just a quiet confidence, because he's a quiet guy. I think he relates well to these kids and everything, but when he talks, you have to lean in to hear him sometimes. Yeah. There's a quiet confidence there, which I just think plays really well here, and there's a chance he could produce a juggernaut for a decade, because I don't know that he wants to go anywhere else unless it's the NFL.
Yeah. So how did this all happen, and what's the future going to look like with Willie Taggart recruiting? We'll get answers to those questions right after this on Wake Up Warchant as Michael Langston will join us. Keep it right here. You're listening to ESPN 97.9 Tallahassee.
Darn pop-ups and video ads.
Are you wasting your time again on clickbait FSU updates that are bloated down with ads?
Yeah. And after crashing my computer, the information isn't even up to date. You're on Warchant.com. What's really going on with the Seminoles?
For the real scoop, you'll need to get your own Warchant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer right now.
You know I like free. Sign me up.
Use the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Nobody has more accurate and timely information on the Noles than Warchant.com.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Welcome on back into Wake Up Warchant Thursday edition of the program. The dust has settled on National Sign Day. We've talked about just how exciting of a time it is right now for Florida State football when you're bringing in all these sort of recruits from all corners of the country. One guy who knew all of this before it happened, looking into that magic ball of his, was Michael Langston. He joins us right now here on the program. Thanks so much for being here, Michael. How are you, man?
Oh, glad to be here, man.
Yeah, running on fumes yet, man?
Getting there.
Yeah, I hear you, man. We'll make this one nice and quick. Speaking of nice and quick, things are always nice and easy when you go out to lunch over at For the Tables properties over at Collegetown, Madison Social, Township, and Central. Get over there, check them out. For the Table Hospitality, good folks. All right, Michael. So first off, let's let you do a victory lap real quick. We'll get big picture stuff, but real quick, Jamarcus Chapman. The folks who subscribe to Warchant could have seen final predictions. You were not only in the minority, you were the only person who thought that Jamarcus Chapman was going to come to Florida State. That was a really big battle between the Canes and the Noles. What made you feel so good about that pick when you made it earlier in the week?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of things. I mean, one was stuff that, I had heard on the visit when he visited FSU, which is I'd heard his family is just like all in. They really connected on that visit with the FSU staff and kind of talks about the culture we've been talking about. So that was part of it. And then I just thought back to his recruitment. early on, he was committed to LSU, but before he made that commitment, everyone thought it was going to be Miami, and it was a lot to go to Miami, and he didn't go to Miami. He picked LSU. And then the same thing happened with this one where, we heard a lot about Miami, but then there was North Carolina and FSU, more than FSU. And to me, it just, felt like he was looking for a reason not to go there. So it kind of gave me a feeling and a vibe when I combined everything together that it was going to be FSU. And, I can tell you, like, the FSU's confidence didn't go down, one time, certainly since that FSU visit. And even after the Miami visit where things went well, they weren't really concerned at all.
Let's keep the victory lap going. You said 9 to 12, I think, or maybe 9 to 15, but then you tapered it off before the fax machines really started purring yesterday. You said between 9 and 12, Florida State could finish. They finished 9th. I mean, it still feels surreal, man. It really does, especially when we were at the Car Museum, last night, getting to hear from the coaches and everything. Just how did this happen, man? I know we've talked about it so much throughout the week, but I mean, it was a reality. It happened. I mean, how did you see this happening, and what were some of the things that stood out to you from what you heard from the coaches last night?
Well, I think, my early impressions of just seeing what they did in the early signing period, that kind of gave me a strong vibe of, okay, these guys are pretty darn good. I mean, just watching them, even guys they lost. I mean, there were close battles with guys that they didn't even really have a relationship with, and they were able to get in there, build a bond real quick, and kind of sell what Willie Taggart wants to do. So that kind of gave me a vibe of what they can do. Plus, I think the important thing is they stuck with their guns and didn't go all wild and just start offering kids left and right that are elite guys that they didn't really have relationships with. They stuck to the guys they knew they had relationships with, and also guys that fit their system, and they rode that, and then they just let their skills take over with what they're selling and just how they are. And I just kind of felt once the momentum got going, I think the really starting point with all this was when they got Jaden Woodbay in the early signing period. I think that really just kicked things off like crazy, and after that, their class was just on fire, and you could tell the rest of the country was taking notice, and that there was a lot of buzz. So I think once that happened, I was like, yeah, I know they're still only 34 or 36, but I got a good feeling they're going to be, inside that, top 15 range, and they finished, close to exactly where I thought, between 9 and 12. So I don't think people can wrap their head around how astronomical, the job that they did for this class when you consider all the things that they had to fight when you're talking about not much time. You basically a week to get early signing period. Then you basically have a month to get the rest of the class done, and you just don't have a lot of time to get all that stuff wrapped up. So I think it's really amazing that they were able to – it shows you their recruiting prowess, that they can connect with kids even if they don't have a long-standing relationship with them.
These coaches, Michael, we heard from them last night at the Automobile Museum. Michael Langston from Warchant.com joining us here on Wake Up Warchant. Walt Bell really impressed me. Coach David Kelly really impressed me. You've heard the kids talk about the relationships they built with these coaches. Now that you got to actually, hear directly from some of these coaches, I mean, what did you walk away from thinking about just kind of what these guys are bringing to the table in terms of their personalities?
Well, I can see why so many kids like them and just the stuff they press the buttons on with these guys. I mean, I think Walt Bell's Walt was probably my favorite just listening to him because it was energetic, but it was also detailed and a lot of, knowledge, and you could see why he's such, highly regarded as, one of the best or hottest names out there as an offensive coordinator. He's a guy that's very sharp. And then you have a leader like David who seemed to be in control, and you have a veteran in there. And I think there was a lot of other guys. I mean, Mark Schneider's a pumped-up, intense guy at defensive ends coach, and then Raymond Woody, who I think is the best recruiter on the staff. I mean, he was very charismatic. So I think these guys are charismatic, but I think they're real and genuine. And that's what I think comes off on kids is, look, we're going to be straight with you, and this is what we want, and this is what we expect. And I tell you, I was really impressed because I've never heard a coach focus so much. You're talking about head coach Willie Taggart. I've never heard a coach focus so much on his pitch and his understanding of academics like he did last night. And I thought that was extremely impressive. I've never heard a coach put the value of academics as much as he does, especially coming from a football coach. I was very impressed.
And it felt sincere. It definitely felt sincere. It wasn't one of those kind of throwaway comments. He talked about, how easy it was this time around to move his family because they're coming back south, and it's to a place where they can win championships, on the field and in the classroom as well. And we saw that they're going to have a lot of good building blocks to use here in the coming years. Any guy from yesterday that I don't want you to rank anybody or give me a sleeper, that kind of stuff. But are there any 2 or 3 guys from this class that that we saw get signed yesterday that you just feel really very confident about in terms of them becoming a really complete and potentially elite college football player at Florida State?
I would say on the offensive side of the ball, Trayshawn Harrison is, I think, one of the best prospects that they signed in this class. He is dynamic as they come.
His tape looks so good, too, right?
Yeah. He is sensational. Of course, their whole class at receiver is sensational, in my opinion, but I really like him a lot. And the guy that not a lot of people talk about, I really haven't watched a lot of this film until I watched it with the coaches tonight. I think the Anthony Grant kid. Goodness gracious, that kid brings a lot of power and physicality to his game, so I liked what I saw out of him. And then on defense, I really like Malcolm Lamar. I saw him twice in games, defensive end from Armwood. He's a kid I really, really like. And another guy that, you would never know this kid's a 3-star because you watch his film, you don't see a 3-star, and that's Jamarcus Chapman. He was very phenomenal when I watched his film. So I think those 2 defensive ends, are going to get on the field pretty early, and I think they're going to have solid careers. But man, I just can't shake my head from Trayshawn Harrison when I watched that kid's film. It is dynamic.
Speed. Legit speed that you could see on tape. It was breathtaking. You could hear the oohs and the ahs in the crowd. It was pretty sweet. Yeah. All right, so one of the cool things that Coach Taggart said, we'll let you go out on this one here, Michael, is that recruiting is like brushing your teeth and combing your hair. When you stop doing those things, you start looking real bad. So kind of a look ahead to 2019. I know you're working on a hot board a little bit, but just in terms of some of the elite recruits that we're going to see, Rivals 100 type guys, anybody that you kind of have an early gauge or pulse on that Florida State's going to likely be in the mix for?
At quarterback, I think you have Sam Howell, who's a kid they offered actually on National Signing Day. He has a very tight bond with Walt Bell. So I think he's a guy that you can certainly watch for. You have Jaden Daniels. He's out there in California. They've already offered him. He's really tight with Taggart. So I think those 2 guys are going to be guys that they're heavily involved there. And then at linebacker, there's going to be a lot of guys. I think Brandon Smith out of Virginia, he's a guy that could play defensive end or linebacker. I think there's a few other linebackers I'm probably forgetting, but these guys, you mentioned what Willie said about his quote, and I thought that was perfect. And I would add on to that is, if you don't have a passion for something, then it's hard to keep doing it every single day. And you can sense and feel, even through listening to these guys, the passion they have for recruiting. You can see it.
Michael, do me a favor. Be passionate about this. Be passionate about sleeping in and doing nothing. Take some time off, man.
No, you got to worry about that. That's coming for sure.
All right, man. Michael Langston, keep it here. We're coming right back with more Wake Up Warchant on ESPN 97.9 Tallahassee right after this.
You're locked in to Wake Up Warchant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Welcome on back. It's Wake Up Warchant. I'm Aslan. He's Corey. Thanks so much for being here. As always, starting your morning with us. We do really appreciate it. Hopefully, I'm working my way back into your guys' good graces. And if I haven't, let's talk more about how cool Willie Taggart is, man.
What are people doing up this early? I wonder.
I know.
We're here. We're doing what we got to do. We're making everybody happy with our radio show. But man, getting up at 6 in the morning. Some people get up at like 4:30 in the morning.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yesterday, having to get up to do, like, all the stuff for Gene and Warchant was like, man, like dragging. Like, I was dragging. That was a long day.
Yeah.
That was a long day. Oh, by the way, a woman came up to me at the car museum and was like, hey, really like your guys' show a lot. I'm like, I've only been here for like 4 days. That's really cool.
That's nice.
Which evened it out. I really need to open up this email on my phone real quick. And I know, like, time is of the essence that we do things. But it was so great because the email started off fantastic. Like, all I could read on the first line was, Aslan, love your show and happy to have you running. And I'm like, okay,
nice.
Cool. Happy to have you running things.
The sight into the ground.
Think you are doing great. That said, for the love of God, please stop praising Jimbo.
Nice.
And this goes on and on and on. So I'm going to stop talking about him. And I don't know, part of me saw just saw him. I guess it's if you saw your ex-girlfriend and she gained 20 pounds, you're like, all right, good, I'm finally over all this. Just finally seeing him on ESPNU doing his live interview yesterday for signing day and just hearing him just spout the same, like, everything's going real good.
Hand of the dirt, guys in space.
Yeah, just covering every base, just being a politician. I'm like, dude, like, I'm over it, man. Like,
well,
I like this new guy.
And remember when you're talking to me, you're talking to somebody that literally I was here for the Jimbo's entire run. So starting in 2007 was my first year here.
Oh, okay.
And that's also when he started as the coordinator. And look, I just think that's kind of natural. I think 10 or 11 years of somebody in one place, it gets stale. Unless you're, I wonder. I'm sure it's not stale in Tuscaloosa because they keep winning championships. But I'm sure the fans probably get tired of hearing Saban say the same things over and over and over again. And I just think that's natural. And maybe in 2029, if he's still here, we'll be tired of hearing Willie Taggart say, have a great day if you want to. But for right now, it's something different and it's something new. And I was reminded of that just watching Jimbo in that press conference, or not in the press conference, just his stand-up during the signing day special on ESPN. It's like, man, I've heard that a lot. And, man, I'm just glad I don't have to try to quote him anymore.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people – trying to quote Jimbo Fisher is like, trying to catch like a black cat in a dark room. I don't even know what the analogy.
That's a good one. I know,
man. I think I'm 1 for 2 in my analogies now. I don't know if I did that one right, but because he cuts himself off and goes in completely different directions. Yeah. So every quote, probably 90% of the quotes I had with Jimbo, there's an ellipses or two where he starts saying something, has an ellipses where he goes and talks about some West Virginia player from the 1970s. Then he comes back to his point.
Right.
Sometimes. So there was always an ellipses. And it just, again, and I'm sure he was sick of reading my stuff. I'm sure he was sick of my questions or my face after a while. That just happens. So, again, I think for everyone, it's just such a breath of fresh air. And I was going to ask you, what was the vibe, because I wasn't there. I was at the basketball game. What was the vibe of the car museum?
The vibe was good. Dude, everyone loved him, man. It was, he started off, right from the get-go. I mean, Tom Block was asking him questions, like warming him up. They just had a little sit-down, and, it was like, oh, you were an athlete. You played everything. He's like, did you punt? He's like, nah, man. He's like, we didn't punt. He's like, I don't plan on punting here either. I mean, just
stuff
things
like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but no, everybody was
now, the old coach will punt on 4th and 3 from the other team's 36.
You got to play the numbers.
Make him go 92 yards.
Yeah, got to play the 1987 statistical probability book. No, I mean, that was a room that was hanging on every word. And, huge pops throughout the night whenever, like I mentioned, when David Kelly started talking about, you guys think that Nick Saban or Dabo, these guys are the best. He's like, this guy is the best recruiting head football coach. Walt Bell, the offensive coordinator, and I want to get back to this, obviously, the big picture we talked about yesterday in terms of how this, not the recruiting class, but how this staff looks now. When you piece it all together and you look at the puzzle and you take a step back, you're like, man, this is awesome. But Walt Bell, who, again, you did that really knock-up story about him, getting his start at Arkansas State and everything, gets in front of the crowd. And it was something that they needed to hear. Like you talked about the other day, like, sometimes you don't want your significant other keep rolling their eyes at you. Walt Bell's like, listen, I've been happy everywhere I've been. I was happy at Maryland. He's like, but, there's 10 to 12 places in this entire planet. He's like, maybe even less than that when they come calling, you just go. You don't ask any questions. You just go. He's like, and this is one of those places.
What was the reaction in the room about
Boom, boom. Just. It felt cathartic, man. Yeah. It felt cathartic. It felt like, like a puppy that's been starving or like a kid's been scratched at your door, wants somebody to put out some milk for him, and it just, your new best friend. Those are sort of things that, I, being in Alabama covering other stuff, was kind of not, having to deal with every single day, every single week. And then I think these fans, it feels awesome to have people who are super excited and grateful for the opportunity because, for me, there's always the inferiority complex almost as a Florida State fan because you know that your endowment pales in comparison to Texas and even to the other freaking school in the state, So, and then Jimbo says all these things, and you start thinking that, well, maybe this is just we have to be grateful.
It really is hard to win here.
Yeah.
That's I think that again, it ain't hard to win here, man. I mean, again, there was 2 championships in that stadium hanging up before Jimbo walked through the door. He brought a third, and he brought a great team. But what Bowden built, what Bowden did in the 80s, and specifically in the 90s, what Deion Sanders' class truly started. Bowden had built a foundation for a decade before Deion got here. But then that Deion class, starting in 87 when they were juniors, all the way up to 2001, really, the Orange Bowl in 2001, it was the best program in the United States. And it changed the university. It changed Florida State fans' expectations. Remember, I was a 10-year-old kid going to Florida State games where you were happy to be in the game with Auburn in the fourth quarter. Or it was cool to be in Ann Arbor in 86, playing them, just playing a big game like that. But Florida State was still thought of kind of as a mid-major, like a team that would win 7 or 8 games. It wasn't in a conference. It was independent. It was in the Metro Conference in basketball. But then Florida State fans got that identity in those 14 years. And the identity was we're fun, we're fast, we dominate you, we love doing it, and we're going to be awesome for a long time. It dipped in that decade. It came back in the 2010s for a while. But it's a fun, fast, and it's a fan base that just appreciates winning. And I don't know. It's not one of the old stodgy programs like a Notre Dame or a Michigan or Ohio State. And it felt like that the last few years. It felt like it was kind of just this unfun behemoth. And it's good to know that there's a chance this could be fun again. I just think there's a chance this could be a really fun program again. It seems that way. And this fan base can have fun again. In the last 3 years, counting the 12 losses in there, it just wasn't all that fun.
No,
it just wasn't fun. You had been at the car museum. I feel you got that excitement that how starved these fans are for that fun again.
I mean, I don't want to throw shade, which is the stupid word, but like I don't want to badmouth anybody on the old side. But you just being there last night, and you're like, that's our defensive coordinator now. Like, awesome. Like, that's our OC. Awesome. Like, there's just this feeling of, my thing is, I want to get to this whole thing about the mix of the coaches they have, but it was so tough because at first I felt like it was like the Willie Taggart, buddy club. Like, they were all coming to Tallahassee, and then he starts, having to reach for these other guys. It felt like that. Yeah. He's reaching for these guys, and you're like, man, like, I just don't know. But last night, by the way, it is Greg Fry. You are right.
Fry, not Frey.
Not Frey. Okay. It is Fry. He had a great comment. He just said that, for the longest time, he's like, I've been going to work every day. He's like, but it doesn't feel like I'm going to work anymore. It's like I'm coming home. I mean, just all these things, just everybody ate it up, and it was sincere. It was just true, like no one pandering. I mean, I know that's what these things usually devolve into, but I mean, you could just sense from everybody around you. I mean, even Michael was like grinning, just talking about, man, this is crazy. I mean, you just saw the youth, the energy, just the ideas, just people excited to be there. Like, yeah. I mean, if you're not happy at your job, it trickles down to everybody. When you're working in a little office of 10 people, when you're the head football coach of a 85 scholarship roster, a university that has 40,000 people, and I don't know how many alumni across the state and country, like, it trickles down. And I felt like it did for a lot of people. And I think last night, maybe not the start of it, but when you start to get to know these folks, it's going to turn for everybody.
Well, and I think these coaches understand the kind of opportunity they have. This is a career maker if you do well. I mean, again, the last 2 defensive coordinators at Florida State before Charles Kelly are now head coaches in the SEC. This is a career maker if you do well here. And I agree with you in the early onset of his staff. I'm like, oh, is he just going to bring his buddies? Is this just Taggart and the gang getting back together? But he didn't do that. He got 3 or 4 guys that he knows he can trust, which is a big deal when it comes to coaching, especially assistant coaches, that he knows can recruit. He believes that they can recruit. But then he also got the most important positions, OC, QB coach, DC, offensive line coach. He got guys he didn't really have a track record. He didn't really have a relationship with. He just went and got guys that he thought would be great doing those jobs. And I think that was really good to see. It was encouraging. He did, again, like you said, he filled out some guys that were kind of that seemed like buddies that go with him everywhere. But you need those guys. You need guys that can recruit. What is a wide receiver? I mean, a wide receiver coach.
I love you keep coming back to it. It's true. It is true. I mean, what is a receiver's coach really?
I mean, hey, go be fast and go make that play. There's obviously things you can teach them as far as plays and assignments and route running and all that. But by and large, it's a lot of God-given ability you're coaching over there. You're just trying to harness it and go get more. Yeah. That's the job. Right. Same with DB coach a little bit. Maybe a lesser extent to DB coach. Actually, a lot lesser extent to DB coach. But offensive line's a big deal. He got a really good guy. He got one of the best coaches available. And I think going back to the point I was trying to make before I got off track there, you got all these guys that really appreciate being at Florida State. Like you said, like Bell said, man, how many other places would the defensive coordinator at Michigan State leave for? With no connection. That's his alma mater.
Yeah, it is.
And he went to Florida State. He left his alma mater where he's been the last 20 years, really, or 20 years of the last 25, and came to a city he's never been in before because he knows what this program is. He appreciates this opportunity. Now, he got a lot of money, too, but he appreciates this opportunity. The kid left Maryland to come here, even though there's no guarantee that he's going to be calling plays. He still left Maryland because of the opportunity. It's refreshing to see that because they appreciate what a juggernaut this program is. It is one of the 10 best jobs in the country. And if you can get an assistant's job here, man, you can go anywhere in 5 or 10 years. You can be in the NFL if you want.
Yeah. Hey, you spent 3 hours of your night covering a basketball game. We should talk about that.
I did.
All right, let's step aside. We'll come right back and wrap things up. You're listening to Wake Up Warchant here on ESPN 97.9 Tallahassee.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source, knows now is a time of true excitement for Nole fans everywhere. That's why Warchant.com is especially proud to announce its newest team member, senior writer Corey Clark. Combine Corey's expertise with owner Gene Williams and managing editor Ira Schoffel, and Warchant.com boasts nearly 50 years of experience covering the team you love. It's Taggart time in Tallahassee, and that means now is the perfect time to sign up for your free 30-day trial. From National Signing Day to March Madness, Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
All right, let's get right back to it again. It's Wake Up Warchant here on this Thursday. Hope you're having a great one. Thanks for being here. I'm Aslan. He's Corey Clark, senior writer for Warchant.com. I'm the director of digital media because I strong-armed Gene into giving me that. He wanted to call me director of multimedia, but that sounded like so 1999.
Yeah, no, this sounds a lot better.
Digital sounds cool. All right, so let me wrap up some thoughts here I have about the coaching staff. And, we mentioned it previous segment. At first it kind of all seemed a little bit herky-jerky and kind of, not very organized, I guess, which wasn't fair, obviously. I just felt like, I mentioned, the Friends of Willie seemed to be coming to Tallahassee at first. I'm just like, where are the nerds? Like, I need a nerd. Like, I need a football nerd. Like, it's like the moment in Almost Famous. You ever seen Almost Famous, the movie?
Course, yeah.
All right, so it's like what? They get into the argument, the lead singer and the guitarist, because he's like, you're supposed to be the front man. I'm supposed to have that mysticism like Robert.
Right, yeah.
Like you need, like there needs to be those sort of dynamics, right? You have, and I think like now when you're able to kind of hear these guys and not play a YouTube clip on a post-practice interview from, 2010 from a coach, like you actually can hear his words in those sort of settings. Really like Harlan Barnett. I mean, he's like, listen, fast, physical, and aggressive. He's like, growing up, football to me was you hit somebody. He's like, we're going to hit people. You have like that tough old school approach. Mark Snyder, high energy guy. I think defensive ends coach, right? Mm-hmm. High energy sort of guy. And then you have, everything it's so well balanced. And like Walt Bell's this kind of, prodigy-esque sort of guy, very just focused on X's and O's. That's his only sort of, his only hobby in life is just focusing on football.
He's the nerd.
Yeah. So it's like,
he's the football nerd.
It's like that perfect sitcom. Like you need the right characters to make like a good TV show. You need like the right kind of personalities to make a coaching staff chug along. And I feel like they just have it, man.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure there were a couple misses here and there. I don't know that Taggart could be any more pleased with this class. And I don't know that this coaching staff. And I don't know that fans that were there last night or will get to know these coaches they could be any more pleased. I mean, I guess you could have gone and gotten, who knows, Kirby Smart to be your DC for $6 million a year or something. But with the finances in place and what they could pay, I just think it's going to be, well, again, we'll see. We got to keep couching it all the time. They haven't played a game. And next year's schedule is hard. But I think this staff, it just seems like a perfect balance of personalities, recruiters, nerds, guys that really are good at their positions and are established, other guys that are up and coming, so they're hungry and not kind of just on their last legs as coaches, but they're hungry and they have a lot of initiative. I don't know if there was a ton of initiative in last year's coaching staff. All these guys are hungry. Some of them probably want to be head coaches, and I just think that it's a perfect mix of that. The guys that are recruiters, the guys that are great position coaches, and the nerds on both sides of the ball, and aggressive and fast paced on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and this is a rhetorical question, but my brother posed this to me in a text message. Look who Jimbo took with him. Nobody. Like, how do you get to a point where
you took a tight ends coach who's basically a recruiter?
How do you get to a point where you assemble a staff that you take a better job, quote, and you're not taking anybody with you? I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, the cool thing, I really like Walt Bell. Cool thing, he's 33. He's younger than I am, which kind of makes me feel weird. But I think he's got a significant other. She was quite attractive. He's walking out there holding her hand. That's good. I have one less, person to compete with in Tallahassee when I go to Midtown and try to dabble with the ladies.
What's that with what were you doing there with the fingers?
Pistols?
Is that pistols?
Kind of.
Oh, you got to put them back in the holster.
Back in the holster. Yeah. Actually, I can't.
That's a good move, man.
I feel dirty.
Like that.
I can't steal pistols here. And this is your guy's sanctum, man. I'm just a visitor.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a good look, man.
But he's a super cool guy. I mean, I was actually waiting in line to get food, and he was in front of me at the bar trying to get a drink, and I'm like Coach Bell, right? He's like, yeah,
soda, right?
No.
I gotcha. Yeah.
All along, it's fine. It's good.
There was a celebration. Yeah. For heaven's sake, we're all adults.
Yeah. It's got a good ending too, but kind of. So kind of introduced myself to him, and I'm like, hey, I think you might know a friend of mine who worked in Jonesboro, Arkansas, when you're in Arkansas State. He's like, yeah, man, good to meet you. He's like, man, I don't know how. He's like, I got to go up there and probably talk in a minute. And one of the ladies at my table wanted me to go get her a beer, and I'm like, he had a $20 bill in his hand. A lady at the table that he was sitting at literally gave him money to go. She's like, go get me a beer.
And I wonder if she knew who he was.
She
might not have hey, if you're going up there, can you get me a beer too?
I told him, listen, shouldn't she be getting you? He's like, oh, no way, man. He's like, never. I would never do that. I'm like, all right. So
he's a gentleman too.
Yeah. So then in the midst of all that, I'm still waiting in line to get food, and she was an older lady. She comes up and she's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, you go ahead. I know you got to talk. I'll go ahead. I'll get it myself. And I'm just like, what coach? I mean, could you imagine just asking, I don't know, Randy Sanders, hey, go get me a beer?
Well, he might have. He's a nice guy, but 3 years from now, we'll see if old Coach Bell, if they've just won a national championship, he'll be like, yeah, no. Actually, if you're up, can you get me a beer?
Right.
Maybe that's will be how that will play. But yeah, man, I know my girlfriend saw a picture of him when he was. I think he not even been hired yet. He was just being rumored to be hired. She's like, wow, who's that? So I was like, okay, all right, settle down.
Yeah, come on.
Settle down. He's too young for you.
All right, so yeah, it's just an exciting time right now, man. And I don't. I always pump the brakes on optimism because going into 2012,
that's a good way to live. I'm with you though. As an Atlanta sports fan, I'm screeching the brakes on optimism at all times.
Expect the worst. You can never be disappointed.
Exactly right.
So going into 2012, I was so enthusiastic and optimistic about Florida State football and then NC State. I was like, it's never going to happen. We're never going to win it all. I'm done with it. I couldn't even really enjoy 2013 until we got to November. I'm like, okay, is the coast clear?
Clemson game. Once you're up 41-7 in Death Valley, that's when you're like, okay.
But the Clemsoning was still a thing. So you're like, oh, well, it's just Clemson being Clemson at this point, So even at that, I enjoyed the game, but I didn't let go and all right, let's just enjoy this, man. Let's breathe it in. So, I don't know, man. I just feel like I have a good vibe about this team, man. And we'll talk about that plenty on tomorrow's show. We got a few minutes
for the
left
next
here.
8 months.
Yeah. We'll have plenty of time, and hopefully you guys don't get tired about us talking about football because that's what motivates me.
It's kind of what this show is going to be a lot about.
Cool. All right, sweet. All right, so we got a few minutes here, Corey. Not to gloss over it, but just to kind of maybe keep it nice and tight and tidy. Florida State had a chance to knock off the number 2 team in the nation. They couldn't. They fall to Virginia at home last night. What did you see in the game that maybe kind of shifted things into Virginia's favor ultimately?
Well, man, I thought Leonard brought up a really good point after the game. Is that just they have tough shot makers. They knocked down tougher shots than Florida State did. Florida State had easier shots than Virginia all night, but they didn't make theirs. Virginia just knocked down some tough shots. They got a couple kids, Jerome and the Guy kid, and then the Devin Hall kid, who's a 5th-year senior. When does that ever happen? That just made shots with dudes right in their face. So much in their face that I think the defenders were like, well, he's not shooting this. Yeah. So they relax a little bit, and they just pop it. Any other school, I think, any other team is like, man, that's a bad shot. Those guys make those shots. They have tough shot makers, and they have guys that make shots late in games they're just tough. They're just a tough-minded team. I thought Florida State played really well. I thought they played as hard as they have on defense all year. They rebounded well. just didn't shoot well in the second half. And against that team, you gotta make some tough shots. In all their tough opportunities, they had a bunch of and-one opportunities that would just roll off the rim. Angola missed his last 10 shots of the game. Terrence Mann only made one basket. Man, when those two guys aren't hitting shots, it's going to be real tough to beat the number 2 team in the country. And they still almost did it. It was a 2-point game with 10 seconds left.
Moral victory at all? Or are they trending up? Or
No, I think I'm really interested how they do on Saturday, because this is that was the kind of half. You had a 10-point lead at half at home against the number 2 team. You're feeling a huge resume boost. You can feel like you blew it. And does that turn into a loss on Saturday? Because they're a better team than Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's not healthy, and they should win that game, even though it's up there. But are they gonna have their confidence knocked with that bad loss against Virginia, or will they not? That just the bad half. Are they going to say, okay, well, that's the number 1 team in the country, because they will be number 1 next week. That's the number 1 team in the country we just lost to barely. We should get confidence from that. If Florida State can get confidence from almost beating Virginia, then yeah, it's a moral victory. If it turns into 2 losses because they're so disappointed, then obviously that doesn't play. But I was really impressed with how hard they played. That might be the toughest game they've had all year, Virginia, in the conference. I mean, they're undefeated. They're 12-0. I think 9 of the games have been over double digits, the results. So them holding them and being up by 10 at half, that's the toughest game I think Virginia's had all year. Florida State just couldn't make the plays down the stretch. But I still think Florida State's a tournament team, and a dangerous tournament team if they get the right draw.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. Don't forget our good folks at For the Table. I forgot to mention them at the top of the segment, which I'm supposed to do, but they're great folks. Go see them over at Collegetown, Madison Social, Township, Central, and hopefully see us on the internet. If not, we'll listen to us tomorrow, rather. That's a wrap for things. I'm Aslan. He's Corey. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Jeff Cameron Show coming up at 3.
These recruiting updates are nothing but fluff.
Are you wasting your time again on free blogs and social media to get the scoop on FSU recruiting?
Yeah, it's all bait and switch. Get me excited with a headline, but get nothing in return. You're on Warchant.com. What's really going on with FSU recruiting?
Could be another top 5 class, but for the real scoop, you'll need to get your own Warchant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer. Just sign up and you'll get full access through signing day. And nobody has more accurate and timely information on recruiting than Warchant.com.
You know I like free. Sign me up. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.